Obviously, we know Clemson's 1-3. We know it's the first time they've started 1-3 in 21 years. So from your perspective, covering this team for so long, can you kind of give context to what this means to Dabo's tenure?
I think it means that he is at a crossroads in his tenure right now because this is uncharted territory. That even as bad as it was when he took over in 2008, there were signs that it's going to get better. In 2010, when this team struggled out to a 6-7 record, he said, I'm embarrassed by the way we're playing, and I'm going to fix it. And there were signs that it was going to get better. And now you have a team that came in full of expectations, a team that came in thinking they had a shot at a national championship and a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. All of that is now off the table. And so it brings up questions about the program, how the use of the transfer portal has transpired, about how recruiting has transpired, about the use of the coaching staff and coaching staff hires. So now, we're kind of at an inflection point for Coach Sweeney. Will he make the changes necessary to keep this program relevant? Will it continue to be more of the same? And I guess we're going to find that out as the season goes on and we head into an off season.
And just like that, I think the conversation has shifted so much over the last few weeks, especially with all the hype that was going in at the beginning of the season. Now it's kind of being spoken about like it's a bridge year. Do you think that the disappointment from the fan side is because expectations were so high that, like, if going into this year it was said, hey, we don't know where we're going to stack up, this might just be a transition year for us, then fans might not be so angry and upset with how things are going?
Well, you had comments from Coach Sweeney, and he said maybe they were taken a little bit out of context, where he thought this team could go 16-0, and that gets people a little bit excited, right? And then yeah, and then I think part of it too is the fact that people are asked to pay more. You're paying more for ticket prices. You're paying more to park. You're asked to dip even further in your pocket to pay for NIL, and you have a quarterback that's reportedly making 3.4 million a year, which is more than any of us will ever see, right? And fans are asked, pay more. And then when the product out on the field doesn't reflect that, then I think you see this kind of a disappointment. And yes, this was supposed to be more of a testament to how this program is run. Yes, we can still go out and barely use the portal. Yes, we can still develop players. We can still have great culture and still go win games. And now that's all out the window. And so I think there's several reasons for the disappointment.
And so now, what Coach Sweeney was saying yesterday is that, yeah, this probably isn't going to be a national championship team. Obviously, it's
Right.
something they've done in recent history, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a very rare thing to do. And they're looking now to still succeed and finish strong. So, what do you think a successful rest of the year looks like? I don't think we can necessarily have the expectations that they win out. So, what would deem success?
Well, if you're a Clemson fan, you're going to start out with winning that game at the end of the regular season down in Columbia, beat South Carolina, which they've lost 2 out of 3 to the Gamecocks, and so that's a little bit of a sticking point. And I don't think it necessarily comes down to wins and losses at this point. Is you just want to see them play better. You want to see execution. You want to see crispness on offense, on defense, execution across the board. I think it is, not fair to ask them to go out and win out. They have a great opportunity in a little less than 2 weeks up at North Carolina, which is also a program in transition. And apparently they're losing players to the transfer portal. And it's a great opportunity for them to kind of go in there and get some confidence and right the ship. And then you've got to go on a tough road trip up to Boston College. Bill O'Brien, the Eagles, that's always a tough place to play, especially when you're not playing well. So for this program, I think you need to use these next few weeks just to play better, just to kind of learn who you are, forge an identity, and then kind of let that affect the wins and losses as we get into November.
Looking into the specifics a little bit, if we go back to Saturday against Syracuse, yeah, they had the yardage, but they weren't getting the points out of it. And I think what really stood out to me was they weren't getting Hauser on the field either. So what concerns does it draw to you that they're able to maybe string a couple plays together, but not able to get points out of it?
Yeah, they need some bigger plays. That's kind of the thing to me is, one of the things that stood out was the fact that K Klubnik would get flush from the pocket and he's scrambling and he's looking for wide receivers. I didn't see his wide receivers getting separation and helping him out at all. And that's where big plays happen. I think it happened a couple of times. And I just asked Garrett Riley about that. And he said, yeah, we've got to do a better job on the scramble drill. I think they've got to get Cade settled down. I'm gonna write a story coming up that Cade needs to find his joy, get your quarterback out there happy and playing again. And I went back and looked, and last year he set his feet, and his mechanics were really good. This year he gets happy feet on his own without even being flushed. They've got to get that a whole lot better. So you start to see all of that, and it just adds up to an offense that you're able to put up yards, not points. And even look at the end of the first half, and you bring up Nolan Hooser, not able to get him out on the field for a field goal. So they called a great play, a little sideline throw to Bryant Wesco that would have gained 8 or 9 yards and get you more into field goal range. And Wesco drops the pass. And as good as he's been, it's 2 weeks in a row where he's dropped a pass that would have kept the drive alive. And you just have to have that execution.
Looking at Riley and Klubnik specifically, there were questions to Coach Sweeney yesterday about their future with the program, whether he would make an in-season change on the coaching staff or with Cade as starting quarterback. And he said for right now, nothing's changing. Um, where do you assess their performance? And from being around Sweeney historically, what kind of moves has he typically made on that front in season?
Yeah, he really rarely ever does anything in season. I thought maybe there might be a little bit of a shakeup in terms of play calling if he was dissatisfied with Garrett Riley. Just kind of wondering as we head into that open date. But Garrett Riley came and he answered questions today. And honestly, if you take a look at it from his football standpoint, I think the play calling's been absolutely terrible. There's been open receivers, plays have been made. It maybe is not as good as it has been, but the quarterback has to play better. The wide receivers have to play better. Cade is just missing guys. He is not seeing the field, and people want to know if we're going to see Christopher Vizina, who is the backup quarterback. But Dabo seemed to indicate last night, no, Cade is the starting quarterback. And then we asked Garrett Riley about it. He said that would be a collaboration, on if Christopher Vizina would ever get in, but didn't seem to indicate that was ever a thought. And that kind of lets you know maybe what they think about Vizina's talents. It's going to be Cade's team the rest of the way.
And you mentioned Cade trying to find his joy. That's something I've asked him about. Feels like he's not playing light. He's not playing free. And so even after Saturday's game, I asked him, does he feel like they're playing with the weight of the frustrations of not being able to get over that threshold, feeling like they're so close but not able to get there? And he said on Saturday he didn't feel like he was. Do you feel like maybe he's just saying that, but he is kind of just not as comfortable as he was?
He is definitely not as comfortable. And he was asked that during interviews last week. Do you feel the weight? And he said no, but you could tell that he did. He walked in there looking like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. You can tell the way that he responded to questions Saturday night after the game. And it's tough because if you look at it, and if reports are correct, he's now the second highest paid person in the building behind Dabo Sweeney. He's getting paid more than his offensive coordinator. That says a lot. And so a lot of times with that high pay comes high expectations. And when you aren't meeting them, you start to press. And I think that's what we're seeing. He's pressing right now.
On the defensive side, a lot of talk has been going on about feeling like TJ Parker and Peter Woods just haven't necessarily been doing their part. They said this afternoon there is a level of accountability there that's needed. What do you see from them?
Yeah, I don't think that Peter's been as bad in the run game as people think. I think his grades have been really good. I like what I've seen there. What we're not seeing is pressure on the quarterback. And some of that may have to do with the fact that Tom Allen coaches have been but don't break defense. There haven't been a lot of blitzes, not a lot of pressure situations. TJ Parker can certainly play better. And I asked Peter, I said, how do you get everybody playing like Will Hill, who has 3 sacks, who is playing with his hair on fire? And he grinned and he said, well, that's our robot. We expect that out of him. How do they get the other guys to go along with that? I just don't know at this point. It hasn't been as good. And again, maybe that goes back to all of a sudden you're getting paid, expectations are high. And it's funny because I asked an NFL scout about the lack of numbers for these guys, and does it matter because they're going to get to a combine, they're going to measure great, still going to get drafted. And he said the teams are now starting to take a look at, hey, if they get the money in college and stop playing, what's going to happen when they give them a rookie contract? Are they going to stop playing? That's the new world that we live in. And these guys have got to simply find a way to put up better numbers, to put more pressure on the quarterback and play better.
We're hearing about that team meeting that they had just between the players, and Dabo Sweeney said it was really emotional and powerful. Do you think that can be a shift for them, that any one meeting can be what clicks for this team? Or is it just kind of like, okay, let's see what we can do with the rest of the way?
Yeah, it can be a shift. I asked Colin Sadler about that, and he said that, while no specific leaders have kind of emerged, that's disappointing. You would like to hear that one or two guys are really taking the lead on this. Excuse me. It's good to hear that guys are taking the initiative to call a team meeting and say, "Hey, there is accountability." And what you need to see is a bunch of guys who are angry at the way that they played, who are angry at the way that they've executed. You don't need a lot of kumbaya moments right now. You need some guys that go out and play with a lot of attitude.
And everybody wants one thing to point to on both sides of the ball that are the cause for the issues. Do you, it seems like the thing that everybody just keeps going back to is the pressure, the money, the pressing. Do you think if we were going to point to one thing, it's that?
I think so. I think the expectations have gotten to everybody. And when you start to have that pressure put on, and these are still young men. Let's face it, these are not complete adults yet. They're still young men who are trying to find their way. And, when you put all of that pressure on them and the expectations are there, it starts to grind on you. They're getting paid like pros, but they're not pros yet. And I think that that is kind of the strange new world that we live in.
Obviously, it's hard to predict what the rest of the season is going to look like because it's been so unprecedented so far. But if you were to make a guess of what the rest of the season is going to look like,
This team rebounds. There are still some absolute landmines in Columbia at the end of the year. Playing at Louisville, which is a team that's playing well. They haven't played anybody. Playing at Louisville on a Friday night, it's going to be tough. SMU and Duke are going to come into Death Valley with high-powered offenses, and SMU is going to be looking for revenge with Rhett Lashley. They're good teams. Florida State certainly looks a whole lot better. They're coming to Death Valley. I can see this team losing 4 games the rest of the way. I can see them losing just one or two the rest of the way. And it's all going to be, I don't think North Carolina is going to tell us a lot. I want to see how they play up at Boston College. That's what I want to see in front of not a lot of fans, in a stadium that doesn't have a whole lot of energy, when you've kind of got to bring your own juice. I want to see how they do there, and then we're going to know how they do. But I think this team will respond. I think Dabo's been at this a long time, and he'll get them turned around enough to make this respectable.